Every single guest on Keel heard via the Jack Spring Electric Keel Newsmaker hotline. Once again, joining us is Governor John Bel Edwards, Chief of Staff. It's Mr. Mark Cooper. Hey, Mr. Mark, welcome back to Keel. How you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning, Robert. Hope you all are doing well. And
well,
your families
sir,
are doing well.
Good. Let's start here. State Representative Alan Seabaugh has introduced or plans to introduce, the term I think is a legislative petition that would neuter the governor's emergency proclamation. What are the governor's thoughts about that?
Well, to be quite honest with you, the governor hasn't said anything about it because we just see that as a distraction. What we're hearing from the legislators, they're not taking it seriously. Whether he gets the votes, time will tell. I think, what's important is, and what's important to the governor, in fact, I think you saw last night, right now he's on his way to the White House to meet with the president, who's been very supportive, as well as the vice president, publicly about the plan we have in Louisiana. And, I know that Representative Seabaugh is probably upset about the decision made on Monday, which was the right decision and was supported by the vice president, as he's indicated publicly. I mean, I think it's a distraction. I think if what he's asking for were to happen, which we know it won't, I mean, what that would mean is, in talking with FEMA Region 6, the administrator there, that would mean any kind of reimbursement for emergency protective measures that we're doing here in the state of Louisiana. If Representative Seabaugh was successful, we would not be able to get reimbursement for those things. So I just don't think anyone's taking it very seriously. And quite honestly, it's almost like he's trying to become the legislature's version of, Reverend Spell down in central Louisiana, and just causing these distractions while, everyone's hard at work trying to save lives and then trying to get business open when it's safe to do so.
Mark, let me ask you,
that's what I would say.
He says the governor lied to a group of Republican lawmakers on the phone, telling them we are going to reopen May 1st. Did the governor just change his mind between those conversations, or did that not happen?
That didn't happen. I was on that phone call, as were, the Republican legislators and members of the governor's staff. What the governor's been saying all along, and I'm sure you've listened to some of the press conferences, is aspirationally he wanted very much to be able to go to phase one, but it was going to be based on the data and on the guidelines that we were given by the White House and the White House Corona Task Force. And so that call took place, I don't know, about when we're looking at Monday, 4 or 5 days before Monday. I'm not sure about the exact date. So why in the world, when we're trying to look at the most recent 14 days of data, would the governor ever make that decision on the phone when we haven't even seen 14 days of data? And that's what occurred on Sunday, that we were able to finally look at the 14 days, and very disappointed. It was like a sock in the stomach for me and the governor, everyone around the table, when we saw the data. But that just didn't happen. That's not accurate. He's not being truthful when he says that.
Mr. Mark, I was told by a couple of folks, read a couple of things last evening, that the state gets another $150 million in federal money by staying on lockdown for another couple of weeks. Is that true, or is that just a rumor? That's not really the fact.
I haven't heard that. I'd have to confirm that. I know there's a lot of talk in D.C. about the third stimulus package, so that may be what they're referring to. As you know, this is changing daily, so I'm not sure about that rumor.
What can open Friday? Is there anything that can go on Friday? We heard this. You can go to a restaurant and sit on the patio, but they can't have wait staff come to you. How's that going to work?
Well, right, Aaron. So if I could, so people understand is that I think people would be surprised what's allowed to stay open. And if you look at the proclamation, there were 3 categories. One were the CISA, those critical infrastructure businesses. The second category were the things that had to close, things like barbershops, beauty shops, gyms, movie theaters. And the third category was every other business which could stay open as long as they had 10 or less people in their businesses. So let's just be clear about that. And in fact, what we currently have in place is more liberal as far as keeping businesses open than what Texas is doing right now. I know on Friday, I think there's going to be another change to the Texas rules, and Mississippi. So we've probably been, as far as states, one of the more liberal ones is keeping businesses open. So let's be clear that those businesses were allowed to stay open, or currently allowed to stay open, and come May 1st, we'll be able to do that as well. As far as the restaurants, that's one of the things that, we looked at, and we wanted to make sure to some way to get additional businesses into the restaurants. In fact, yesterday our team was working with the Restaurant Association and being clear about the guidelines and seeing how we could figure out ways, whether it be like in downtown Shreveport and Shreve Square, for the restaurants around there to, if they don't have outdoor seating, to set up makeshift outdoor seating, just something that can get people into their businesses, as well as, being able to deliver food and carry out.
But a waiter can't come over to the table and take my order.
No, they can, and they cannot. And the
So I
reason for
order
that
from the
is
car,
because of the
or
conduct.
so I order from the
Well,
car.
and
How
that's
do you do that?
Well, what we're asking them to do is to be creative. It'd be like a counter, go up to the counter, or to order it from a vehicle, or to go online and place the order. And the Restaurant Association is going to be sending out guidelines if they haven't done so already. And what that means is that a patron would be able to go up to a counter and pick up their food and take it back to the table. And just to be clear, too, we're looking at this as a 2-week stopgap, and this may be something they continue to do, because we're hoping that, on May 15th, we'll be able to go to phase 1, but that would only mean 25% capacity is what we're looking at inside the restaurant. So that, coupled with potentially additional outdoor dining, coupled with, takeout and delivery, hopefully that will make up for a little bit for what the restaurants are suffering and losses in revenue. So again, we're trying to, think of every creative way we can to help businesses, and that's what the governor's goal is. And that's some of the things he's going to be talking about to the president this morning while he's in D.C.
You're wrecking my Mother's Day. I'm just letting you know, FYI.
Yeah, well, I'll send you a nice card and a gift card to one of the restaurants there in Shreveport, so that they can get some business later on when they're allowed to open fully.
Mr. Mark, here's a question that I have asked everybody from Jay Darden to Senator John Kennedy and a bunch of others. And maybe you can give us an answer to this. I get a variety of responses. In all the meetings that the governor's been in with the medical people, with the economic people, et cetera, getting all kinds of advice, I'm sure the governor has asked the question, or somebody has. What's the furthest date out? What's the longest we can go with this lockdown? What's the longest we can go and still come back? Economically, I mean, there has to be, I would think, a date in mind where if we don't open things back up by date X, no matter what that date is, that the economy just goes over the cliff. That has to have been discussed?
Well, it's been discussed in the fact that, and we don't have a date, but it's as soon as possible, Robert. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and that's why all these emergency protective stay-at-home measures are important. And we are seeing significant progress. It's just those 3 regions that were identified on Monday. And keep in mind, what's important for your listeners to know is that the worst thing that could happen is for the governor to become very lenient and to reopen all businesses, and then we have a second round of this virus and have to go back and close businesses again. That would be a nail in the coffin for a lot of businesses, to have to fire people, to lay them off again a second time and then try to come back. But to say there's a specific date our goal is just as soon as possible, and in the meantime, do everything we can to support businesses, to make sure D.C. is looking at what they can do as far as stimulus packages, which we've been doing. We've been having great cooperation and partnership with our congressional delegation. And then also, again, just with the president and vice president, they've been very complimentary of Louisiana and what we are doing here, and just trying to do all we can to support businesses. But the number one goal is, the safety and protection of Louisiana citizens. Let's not forget them and forget all the people that have died. And also remember, too, that it wasn't like 5 or 6 weeks ago that we were number one, not in the nation, but in the world for the percentage increase in cases, and number 2 per capita in the country. Right now, we're number 5. But we're making progress. But the goal is try to, for everyone to continue to follow the order, stay at home as much as possible, utilize businesses where they can, practice social distancing and wearing masks, because that's something else that we're asking for in public beginning on May 1st. And we can get through this, and we're going to be much better because of it. When I say we're going to be better, we're going to be a better state, and we're going to recover and do all we can to recover.
Mark, Jay told us we got $1.8 billion from the feds. 55% was going to the state, 45% to local governments. And he was working on the criteria. Where are we on the criteria for what cities are going to get how much? Shreveport and Bossier need some of that money now.
They do need it, and I know the governor has instructed Jay to, by the end of the week, to have those guidelines set up, and it's based on money they've spent directly related to response to Corona. Unfortunately, a lot of them, including the state, may have some, because of loss in tax revenues and other revenues, are going to be hurting. But it has to be money that's spent specifically on response to the virus. But Jay Darden is working on that, and the hope is to have that by the end of the week.